Hello, my name is Jorb. I love gear, and this is the JHS Pedals 424 Gainstage. It is modeled after, or I guess based on, a single channel of the mixer section of a Tascam Portastudio. I'm looking at mine right now, but I'm positive it's out of frame. You'd be right to think of the color box right away. It's a similar idea. Here's this piece of mixing equipment that people are using for guitar sounds or other things. Why don't we put that in a pedal format? So this is like that, has a DI out just like the color box, and is useful in a lot of the same scenarios. You'll see JHS and probably a lot of other people demoing this reference MK.Gee, who's an artist, a guitar player, who's really, really unique and uses a Tascam instead of an amp. It's the very last thing in his signal chain. I think that's awesome. I think that's cool. But I think this is almost less connected to guitar sounds and direct guitar sounds than it is to electronic music, than it is to synthesizers or drum machines. But it really is great for everything. I tried on guitar in the video. You'll see that later. Anyway, I'm telling you things you're about to watch. Thank you, JHS, for sponsoring this video. If you're subscribed, thanks for coming back. If you're a patron, that means the world to me. If you aren't either, I encourage you to support me in whatever way works for you. Let's make some noise. Here we are on the table. This is an all-time favorite of mine, the Korg Minilogue. Pairing it with the 424 Gainstage because you wouldn't think of it as big, you wouldn't think of it as full, you wouldn't think of it as gritty, and I think this can add all those things to something that might be otherwise, no disrespect, my darling, a little anemic. Anyway, I'm running through the 424 Gainstage and then the Strymon Volante. Let me lean back. Eventually, I'll turn on this TT78. It's a CR78 clone from Cyclone Analogic. There's too many names on it. I don't know what to call it. Cyclone Analogic TT78 Beatbot. It's the TT78. Anyway, funny enough, they're on top of my Tascam 424, which is the sort of 4-track mixer tape recorder that this takes a lot of inspiration from. The controls here directly relate to the controls of a single channel of the mixer section of the 424, or the 414, or any other Tascam mixers that aren't tape recorders. You're going to find a lot of similarities in the sounds and the character that you would get out of this, that you would get out of one of those mixers. So controls are gain 1 is the trim, or the gain, per channel gain on our mixer here. The EQ, of course, is part of that channel. Very bottom of the channel, we have a per channel level. That's gain 2 here. And then volume is like master level on the Tascam. So this is one channel of the 4 channels available in a Tascam. A lot of the other people you're going to see talking about this will be referencing MK.Gee, a guitar player who I really like, who's doing things that are different, which in guitar is pretty rare. He uses a Tascam 424 instead of an amp. That's the last thing. That's his final sort of tone shaping piece of gear. I think this is cool on guitar. I think using it for guitar is really cool. But it's just a Gainstage. It's just a preamp. There's so many other things. It doesn't have to be a guitar. In fact, it's probably more likely you've heard more recorded sounds of electronic gear running through a mixer like this, getting gain from a mixer like this, than it is that you've heard finished tracks with guitar running through it. So I'm happy to show you. some of those other instruments. Anyway, I've talked a lot and I haven't turned this on even. So let's get this a little more neutral. There's our sound. Almost no change, almost totally uncolored. And if you think about its source, if you think about where it comes from, that's what you'd expect. A lot of the gain, a lot of the distortion is going to come from the upper edges of these controls, because it's not something that was ever really meant to be used like this. So if we get our gain from gain 1, which would be like turning up trim on a Tascam, we're going to hear a pretty big volume jump. I'm going to manage that with both our channel level and our master level. And there, you can see our waveform. We're hitting our headroom, so if I get a really slow attack, that's perfect. You can see where it starts to clip. And if I do polyphonic, it'll gain. It'll be a lot gnarlier. Let's do that without. Love that. And I also love showing it on the oscilloscope like that because it's so clear and it makes you think of it more as a sort of layer of your synthesis, as a sort of layer of your sound design, and not this is some gritty distortion adding thing at the end. Well, you really are, you're manipulating waveforms. Changing the way it sounds at that fundamental of a level, even though, you know, it's not always helpful to think about it like that. You should think about it as after all the synthesis, but it is part of that same like physical process. Anyway, you're probably going to get most of your gain from gain 1. If we turn that down and start turning up gain 2 and use that as sort of where do we get our drive from there, you can see it really just doesn't have a limit. Gain 2 is a lot cleaner gain, a lot cleaner of a boost. And same thing with the master level. This can get crazy, crazy, crazy loud. I'm in the bottom 10th of this, and my mixer is, you know, set as if I was just running through the Minilogue. There, when I do some fuller polyphonic stuff, you see I'm hitting the level a bit more. But if I push up gain 1, so maybe we can find headroom on gain 2. There's some of it. That sounds different to me. A little bit more. Dime it if I have them both up, but I find more pleasing results from one or the other. Let's do something more. Here's a different sound. Something monophonic. And I'll use this to show off our EQ. You lose a lot of low end when you turn up resonance here on the Minilogue. And I can compensate for that here with the bass. Get a little more gain, a little more treble as well. Let's hear it without. Again, sometimes I'm worried I'm just hearing it get louder, and I like that. Big difference. Let's get the... And to reference MK.Gee again, so much of the playing is interesting because it's dynamic. You can hear some of those same interactions, some of those same results with your envelope movement here, even though, of course, you know, you're not hitting strings. But you can hear as this rises, as this gets louder, that's when you hear it start to interact with the preamp. When you find those edges of the gain, because again, this is supposed to be generally a clean channel. So really the edges of control and the edges of its headroom are where you're going to start to hear changes. So having really dramatic envelope curves is where that's going to become obvious. Accentuating that high end by pulling down the bass. I'll bring it back in. Really, really powerful. To compare this to the color box, there's less control over the EQ, there's less flexibility over the EQ, but it's accomplishing a lot of the same things. Especially the EQ section here. It is a really impactful control on synthesizers, on stuff like this. If I bring these both down, we'll accentuate the mids. Lots of high end, make it sparkly. It sounds like I've synthesized in a high pass because effectively I have. Yeah, sounds really, really good. Let's get back to lighter on gain 1, lighter on gain 2, higher on gain 1. This is the buzzier, fuzzier sort of parts of gain in this. Polyphonic here. It'll really, really blow it out when I have multiple voices. Yeah, let's do that again with gain 1 higher than gain 2 higher than gain 1. I'm thinking I'm reading them left to right, but I know it's really trim in channel level. I like that. It's a lot more subtle than the fuzzy buzzy gain 1 on full. Get that a little lower. Cool. For this application where I'm sort of thinking it as like a drive pedal, it's a dirt pedal, I'm going to be in the higher ranges of these. These are going to be to taste, and this is going to be like utility, right? Volume is just going to be to tame it. And a lot of that is specific to I'm running it through something that's at line level that you would expect to sort of treat this as a dirt pedal, as a gain pedal. Let me get a much clearer example of like a specific use case I would probably be using this for. There you go. I think that's a pretty good example for the Minilogue. And using this as part of like an effects chain to sort of fill out a sequence or finish a sequence is realistically where I'll be using it. And I think it does that great. I think a Gainstage with provenance, like a Gainstage from somewhere with some history, really, really works for me. I don't know if that's because this is the stuff that I love. I love the sort of history of effects and sound and stuff. Or if, you know, the effects with provenance have provenance and they're historical and people know about them because they sound good. I think it's a little bit of both. Anyway, I think it sounds great here. Let's try this with a different instrument. Jump scare. I've got a guitar. I'm not a great guitar player, certainly not in the MK.Gee sort of style, but I think so much of what's interesting about the preamp can be discovered through the way he plays, sort of showing that off. So I have this sort of MK.Gee-ish, really lightly, I'm using that really loosely, facsimile set up here. The pedal chain is Keeley compressor plus then an Electra phaser. I wanted modulation, but also this can split stereo. So the bottom path is the RV5, the Digi delay, and then our 424 preamp. And the other side is going through just the chroma console. That is sort of to emulate what I think of as some of the more like iconic MK.Gee guitar sounds, which is running through a guitar synth in parallel to his regular chain that ends in a 424. I think it's a Roland VG. And importantly, I play with a pick I mostly play with a pick. He mostly plays with his fingers. I'm muting one side, the chroma console. So we're just hearing the bottom channel here. I'm worse playing with my fingers, and this like doesn't hide anything. It's so clear, it's so articulate, it's so responsive. There's no hiding, especially if you're not distorting it. So I'm also tuned to B standard. Let me try and find the sweet spot here. So you see me changing the volume on the guitar a lot. Trying to find a sweet spot. Maybe bass a little bit up. I also don't have it in me to learn any MK.Gee riffs. So if we listen to just the chroma console, I'm sort of emulating that Ranger Effects reverb, where when you play hard is the only time you hear the reverb. Because if I play soft, you'll barely hear it. If I play hard, makes it through a little more. You know, like, people are always talking about guitar sounds at the edge of breakup. This is that same idea if you just take, like, fundamental the edge of breakup. But this is, like, really fried once you hit that headroom. It isn't easing into it. It doesn't feel like soft clipping. It's a really harsh, hard clipping. And again, I'm sorry I'm not a great player. But I do think it's totally worth investigating. And again, having sort of like ambient effects into a Gainstage. In traditional guitar signal pathing, you wouldn't think of that. But here it really, really does work well. Let's try this. That's pretty close to what I've been looking for. Yeah, I'm so much better with the pick. But it doesn't sound right, and it doesn't give you the level of dynamics that works so well. Anyway, this is going to be a short interlude. I'm not going to bore you anymore. Anyway, you get the point. There's a lot that's interesting on guitar that I want to make sure people are highlighting. It mostly pertains to dynamics, finding the edge of breakup, and being okay with extreme settings. I've been using bass all the way down, treble all the way up, and that is like a good, cool, interesting sound that really is working for this. Anyway, let's get back into my domain. Here we are, and I've got a table full of Tascam, along with the 424 Gainstage we've been talking about this whole time. I have my Porta Studio 424 Mark II. Now, pictured on the pedal is a different version. I think it's a Mark III. It doesn't matter. I also have this Tascam 106, which is way earlier and not a tape deck, but it has pretty similar preamp. Definitely has the same controls available. We have a high and a low, a gain 1, a gain 2, and a level. My point here is not, man, this doesn't sound exactly like the old Tascam. It must be bad. I'm not that person. You shouldn't be that person. Okay? When a company says we have a new thing inspired by this old thing, you shouldn't immediately break out the testing equipment. You shouldn't immediately break out the spectrum analyzer. That's not the most important part. In fact, that minutia is probably the least important part. This has most of the same control over a circuit that is at least reportedly more or less the same. And the biggest difference, you can put this on a pedal board and you can buy it new and you can power it with pedal power. This is so much more usable for what this ended up being used for, certainly in the context we're talking about. We're using a single channel of the mixer for audio processing. This is a better format for that. You will find more opportunities to use this for that. That's what's exciting about this. And if the high end isn't identical, that's not bad. Okay, I've made my point. And really, the point of having the old one is saying, hey, there's other things that did this or work like this. So, you know, the sort of provenance of the 424 specifically, even right here, it's the library, it's the iconography, that's what they're invoking. There are other things that have and do behave like that. So if you aren't excited about the 424 or anybody who's ever used the 424, maybe you're more excited about an artist or a studio or a record or whatever that was made by overdriving, something more like this, an older mixer and not a tape deck. And this is a chance to show you that other things do work like that. All that said, I'm using the Moog Labyrinth. Simple to get an interesting sequence. And I really like it. So I'm going to leave the same sequence. It's not going to change at all. And I'm going to turn up all the controls. Sort of. Okay, sounds good to me. Now the 424 Mark II. I'm in channel 4 here. There's that. Do about the same settings I've been liking. High and low. Gain 1, gain 2, level. Also good. I think I gotta swap my cables around. I knocked my camera way out of line. So now just the 106. That would be here and here. Perfect. I plugged into the mic input because there's way more gain available. You can see that's distorting even earlier. There's a separate line input. This feels like it's got a lot more gain. And that gain's killing the high end. And that sounded great too. I hope I've made my point that this sounds like what it's inspired by, and what it's inspired by sounds like some other stuff too. Cool? Cool. I think I got one more idea.